So imagine booking a stay at an exclusive five-star hotel. You have a grand piano in the lounge, fine dining, a private sleeping room.
Right, the works.
Yeah, but the catch is the entire hotel is floating in the sky, and it is suspended by millions of cubic feet of highly explosive gas.
It sounds like a supervillain's lair, honestly.
It really does.
Yeah.
But you sent us this really fascinating stack of historical research for today's deep dive, covering the spectacular rise, that tragic 34-second fall, and the surprising future of the Hindenburg.
Yeah, our mission today is really to figure out how this unparalleled luxury was allowed to just coexist with such unimaginable risk.
Because back in May 1937, this was like the absolute pinnacle of human engineering, right?
Oh, absolutely. They called it the Queen of the Skies. It was 245 meters long. To put that in perspective, that is just 24 meters shorter than the Titanic.
Wow, so it was massive.
Massive. And traveling on it was strictly reserved for the ultra-wealthy. I mean, tickets cost over $7,000 in today's money.
Which is wild because, well, it's basically like building a luxury resort on top of a giant floating matchstick.
Exactly.
The very thing keeping the luxury aloft was the exact thing that could instantly destroy it. I mean, using hydrogen instead of helium is like driving a car where the cabin is just filled with explosive vapor.
That is a terrifyingly accurate analogy, yeah.
Right. And that is exactly what happened on May 6th in New Jersey. The ship hit some bad weather. The captain makes a sharp turn to align with the wind. And just 34 seconds later, this monumental achievement is a pile of ash.
It was incredibly fast.
So it really begs the question, if they knew hydrogen was a flying bomb, why on earth did they use it?
Well, it really comes down to pure geopolitics. Helium was the safe, inert alternative, but the United States completely controlled the global supply at the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they strictly banned its export. Germany simply had no choice but to use hydrogen.
Ah, okay. So the crash itself, you mentioned the sharp turn in a thunderstorm. Did that cause the leak?
Yes, exactly. That sharp turn caused a support wire to snap and slash a gas cell inside. So hydrogen began to leak.
And because the airship was covered in this highly flammable cotton canvas that was coated with an aluminum-infused paint,
Right, very flammable.
pushing through that heavily charged storm essentially turned the ship's skin into a giant flying capacitor.
Precisely. A massive static charge built up on the metal frame. And as soon as the landing ropes hit the wet ground, the ship grounded out. A single spark ignited the leaking gas.
A static spark. I mean, that explains the physics perfectly. But in the paranoid political climate of 1930s Germany, physics wasn't really enough for the public, was it?
No, not at all. They wanted a villain.
And before we get into this part of the sources, we should make very clear to you listening that we are strictly reporting what is in these historical documents. We are absolutely not taking sides or endorsing any 1930s political viewpoints here, right-wing or left-wing. We're just conveying the historical record.
Right, of course. Just looking at the history. The scientific truth of a spark just felt too random for people. At the time, the airship company was run by Hugo Eckener.
And he was quite controversial then, right?
He was. He was one of the few prominent figures openly critical of the Nazi regime. Eckener was so defiant that when Joseph Goebbels requested the new airship be named Hitler, Eckener flat out refused.
Wow, that took some nerve.
Yeah, he named it Hindenburg instead, after the former German president.
Which I imagine created the perfect breeding ground for conspiracy theories. When the ship exploded, people immediately assumed it was sabotage.
Exactly. Rumors started flying that either anti-Nazi activists planted a bomb or that Hitler purposefully destroyed his own country's pride just to ruin Eckener's reputation.
But the investigations cleared them, right?
Yeah, it took decades of rigorous investigations to completely clear everyone of sabotage. The evidence consistently points squarely back to that tragic static spark.
Knowing how fragile these giants were, it makes the sheer obsession to get them airborne in the first place even wilder. I mean, looking at the sources you brought, this trial and error goes all the way back to 1783.
Oh yeah, the Montgolfier brothers. They launched a hot air balloon carrying a duck and a hen.
Wait, a duck and a hen? Why?
Just to see if the altitude was survivable for living creatures.
That is hilarious. But the learning curve was incredibly steep, right?
Extremely steep and very costly. By the early 1900s, you have Ferdinand von Zeppelin, the actual namesake of these airships, relentlessly trying to master dirigible flight.
I have a really hard time wrapping my head around Zeppelin's thought process, to be honest. I mean, his early airships crashed. They lost control in the wind. His LZ-4 model completely exploded in a storm.
It was a disaster.
He even mortgaged his wife's assets to fund this operation. Most rational people would have just walked away after the second or third fiery explosion.
Well, the irony of Zeppelin is that this wasn't born from sudden, brilliant genius. It was born from a man who was almost pathologically immune to the concept of failure.
No kidding.
He mortgaged everything just to watch his prototypes repeatedly explode. It really proves that sometimes world-changing engineering looks a lot like madness in the early days.
That is a great way to put it.
And it was exactly that stubborn refusal to accept reality that laid the foundation for Eckener to later launch successful commercial global flights.
Right. Though, of course, the era of commercial airships was ultimately grounded by the airplane. But airplanes didn't just win because of their technical capabilities. They won on the efficiency of time.
Yeah, flying at over 700 kilometers an hour compared to the airship's 100.
Exactly. Society collectively decided that arriving at a destination faster was worth sacrificing the physical space, the silence, and the comfort of the journey.
Which is what makes the modern revival of the airship so intriguing. In 2017, a UK company successfully tested the Airlander 10, which is this massive new airship.
And with helium now easily accessible on the global market, those explosive safety issues from the 30s are completely resolved.
Totally resolved. And the primary appeal isn't really luxury anymore, it is the environment.
Right. The sources say modern airships produce just 1/10 of the carbon emissions of jet planes. They require significantly less fuel, and they operate almost silently.
Yeah, as carbon emissions force us to radically rethink how we transport cargo and people, the calculus of that societal trade-off between speed and sustainability is shifting again.
It really is. And it leaves you with a fascinating thought to mull over. If these giant silent airships become the new green standard for moving heavy cargo around the world, it makes you wonder, will we eventually see a future where entire permanent floating distribution centers, or even airborne hospitals, just live permanently anchored in the clouds right above our cities?